Hello and welcome. My name is Jennifer Laszlo Mizrahi, and I'm the proud president of Respectability, a nonprofit organization that is working to fight stigmas and advance opportunities for people with disabilities. I'm delighted today to be working with some fantastic partners from Respectability, from World Enabled, from Fiesta Educativa, and I want to also thank our sponsors of this work who have been so incredibly helpful. Let me just start by saying that, hold on, I'm trying to turn the pages. Coca-Cola Foundation, that Vincenzo there at their foundation has been an extraordinary champion of women and girls with disabilities, and he himself, as someone with lived disability experience, is a wonderful role model for all of us. So thank you to Coca-Cola for their support. And thank you also to the New York Women's Foundation, which is enabling us to advance opportunities for women and girls, particularly in New York. And we do know that there's so many of them who are from the Latinx community. This is really exciting information that has been put together by the co-authors that you're about to meet. But I also want to acknowledge that our National Leadership Fellows from multiple cohorts, and their names are listed on the screen there, along with our staff, have diligently worked hard on this project. So thank you to the Ford Foundation and to the Alexander Foundations and others for making the fellowships possible. I also want to just point out some key statistics before we introduce you to the speakers. The first of all is that there's such a large number of people with disabilities at all age ranges, but that so many of them are invisible disabilities. So we have the total number of Latinx community members who are in this country, and it's broken down by the different kinds of disabilities, whether it's visual or hearing or mobility or cognitive or self-care. There's a number of different kinds of disabilities in this country. They have an employment rate, if they have a disability, that is significantly lower than that of other members of the Latinx community, and we're deeply concerned about that, and we know that one of the most important things that we can do is to ensure that they have a great start with their families, with their parents, and with their public schools. I want to also point out that this particularly impacts the states of California, Texas, Florida, and New York, where there are very large Latino populations there and Hispanic populations, and so some of those numbers are here. And what you see is that they account for over 12% of students who are being served as students with disabilities with America. Now, I want to point out that it actually should be more than 12%, and the reason is that more than 12% of students in America are Latinx students. The fact that only 12% of them are being served with special education services means that they're not always getting the diagnosis, the accommodations, and the services they need to not only survive, but to thrive. What we also see is a very low graduation rate, which is very problematic, obviously, and that many of the students with disabilities have invisible disabilities. This is very important. To some extent, people who have a visible disability, such as they are blind or they're deaf or they use a wheelchair, they have it a little bit easier in school in that people see that it's obvious that they have a disability. When somebody has an invisible disability, such as a mental health disorder, or like myself, I myself have invisible disabilities. I'm dyslexic, and I also have ADHD. Sometimes people think that children simply aren't trying, or that it's a question of a language barrier. So they're not getting the appropriate services and supports they need to thrive. Now I'm going to turn it over to our co-authors. And I want to say how delighted I am, because Respectability is a nothing about us without us organization. That means that we believe very strongly, and there's a lot of evidence to support this, that the most success that people can have is when the people closest to problems are involved deeply in leading the solutions and come up with the ideas. And so it's clear that this guide needed to be written completely by people from the Latinx community, and it also needed to be done by those with deep, deep disability experience. And so Dr. Victor Pineda is a world-known expert on disability issues, and Stephanie Farfan, who herself is a little person, is a tremendous advocate on behalf of Spanish speakers with disabilities. Paula has deep, deep experience in terms of being a parent of a child with a disability and also being a very high-performing professional that is advocating in Spanish in her work life. And so she really has learned a lot about how to advocate for children with disabilities. And I also want to thank our partners over at Fiesta Educativa, particularly Edith, who really helped contribute to this guide. And so I'm going to turn it over to the team, to Stephanie, who's going to start going through this important material.
Hello. So Respectability now has a Spanish section where we have defined various disabilities throughout our website. You can see here some of them, and then it continues on. We have also profiles on various celebrities with disabilities, particularly Latina celebrities. Michelle Rodriguez, her profile is in English and in Spanish. Gina Rodriguez, Selena Gomez, even Frida Kahlo. And so we are highlighting important people with disabilities. And I'm going to pass it over to Paola so we can begin our tips.
Hello to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. We're going to summarize 10 tips to let the parents know what can they do when they have a child with a disability. So there's some, tips that you can apply with your child. First, you have to recognize that your child with a disability is capable and can change the world. Absolutely. You need to create a network of support. This is very important for us, for parents. It's very important to have, someone to help us to reach our child's potential. We need to promote our child's independence. They can do it, and they can do independently. Of course, they will need your support in a lot of things, but you have to work towards their independence. Please, you have to create a kind of team with the teachers and with the professors. You are a team. You are the parents and the teachers. This is very important. You have to meet with them to create an individual education plan for them. Try to be a team with them. And there's going to be 10, but I'm going to go until the 5th, and then Victor will go, Stephanie will go with 6th. Please participate in your child's learning. It is very important that you get involved. All that has to do with their learning. Stephanie.
Okay, so there's 3 main laws that protect students with disabilities. IDEA, which is Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the American Rehabilitation Act, and the American with Disabilities Act. It's important that you understand what each law does so you can better advocate for your child and help your child learn how to advocate for his or herself. So IDEA is primarily involved with IEPs. So that is specialized education. That is special education. IEPs only include 13 specific disabilities, which only deal with educational performances or ability to learn and benefit from general education curriculum. And the 504 plan, which falls under the American Rehabilitation Act, is a plan for access at school. which is any child with any disability who might be limited in a basic life activity like learning or accessing anything in schools would fall under there. So it's important to know which plan your child falls under, and as well as familiarizing yourself with the rights granted to your children under the American with Disabilities Act. And also, it's important to learn who the experts in your communities are, and meet with them, contact them, which I know can be difficult. Sometimes people may not have the resources to do so, and that's the point where you should reach out to schools. And because they're the ones that are primarily going to be able to advise you on any access issues, any specialized education alternatives or opportunities that there may be. And also remember the phrase, nothing about us without us. I know Jennifer already said it, but it's important to remember because this should be the motto of the disability community. And it's always important to connect with your child so the child can have a perspective as well, because their views are the most important view. And now I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Victor Pineda.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, Jennifer, for inviting us to be a co-author in this very important resource. I think it's important to remind ourselves that being a parent is a hard job, and nobody is given an instruction manual. And I think that to be able to develop a set of recommendations or ideas or suggestions is a good way to pass on the learning. I myself am an individual with significant disabilities, but I also became a father, a stepfather of a young man with significant learning disabilities as well. So I'm bringing my own experience and reflecting on the ways that my own parents raised me, and also in the ways that I had wanted to be supported by my parents, and the ways that I want to support my own child. And so that's why these next few tips are really important, and they bring together the core idea of the whole toolkit, which is that being involved in your son's or your daughter's activities isn't just related to what they do in the classroom. It's not just about checking their homework, but understanding what the friendships are like, understanding and being able to address bullying, understanding that there could be, a presence that you have that doesn't have to be overwhelming, but that they know that you are there if you need them. So there's a fine balance between being present and creating enough space for the child to grow on their own. And don't worry, your child will know that you're always there for them. I think a lot of parents from the Latinx community might feel a sense of fear or frustration that their child might be growing up too quickly or might end up making some mistakes. But I always tell parents that it's through those moments of developing your self-esteem or your self-awareness, and it's those opportunities to learn from the mistakes where you can really grow. The ninth tip that we have is to nurture a positive disability identity. And I think that in mainstream U.S. society, the disability community in English has quite a long history of advocacy. And we have developed advocates that are role models, but we don't celebrate enough in the Hispanic and Latino communities the role models that transcend those identities, that intersect those identities. And so I think that being, an immigrant, being a person from the Latinx community, but also being a person with a disability means that I can be a role model to younger people, younger folks from the Latinx community that want to see that they can succeed, that want to show that that any of these identities by themselves isn't going to be a barrier to reaching your goals and your dreams. So really those positive stories and understanding that you can learn more about activists that have made an impact on this country is really important, because it gives you a chance to say, you know, if she can do it, so can I, and you become part of a bigger community. And the last tip really is to recognize that all of these challenges that you might face also come with incredible gifts and remarkable experiences. So we want to recognize the challenges and celebrate the successes of our children. And that means that, you know, every day there's a chance to find a way to push a little bit farther, to develop more self-confidence, more self-esteem, to develop a chance to build a new friendship. And it's really those experiences that give you the sense of identity that leads you toward the path of success. So it's about not being labeled by the disability, but understanding that there will be challenges along the way, and then celebrating every time one of those barriers is overcome, or one of those challenges is addressed, and celebrating the moments of joy as well in the process. Because this is not just about having a difficult or boring life, it's about being part of society and experiencing every bit of magic of childhood and of parenthood, in schools and out of the schools. So as we think about this toolkit, we think about that, you know, each one of us has a story, and the story is definitely flavored by your culture and your background and your lived experience. And the Latinx community is really a vibrant and a very active in a variety of discussions. And we really want the discussion of disability and inclusion to really resonate with this community as well. So we will be doing the same seminar, the same webinar in Spanish to reach this audience. I've been tweeting out, and will continue to tweet out these tips in both Spanish and English, at Victor Pineda and at World Enable, as will Respectability. And we want to invite you to join us on this process, because this is not about just, you know, four people with lived experience developing a tool. It's about hundreds of people and dozens of organizations that serve these diverse populations, identify that we are stronger when we work together. And unidos podemos lograr lo que queremos. United, we can achieve what we want. So let us work together in unity, and let us work together towards strengthening and lifting up the voices and creating a future where we all belong, where we all succeed, and we can all achieve our potential. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really want to engage you in a dialogue, and so we'll open up the questions now to the people that have gathered with us here or online. Stephanie, would you like to take over the computer?
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
So there's a lot of tips in there that are for parents with children, with less than children that have disabilities. Is there a lot of information in this toolkit that is for the students themselves that have disabilities, and how they can best be able to obtain the education and accommodations that they need inside and outside the classroom?
Can you repeat the question for the people online?
Okay. So, if I heard you correctly,
Yes.
The question is, are there any tools in this toolkit for students with disabilities to better advocate for themselves?
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I think there are. So we saw tip number 6, which is know your rights. I think that's not just for parents. I think every student should know what their rights are under not only the ADA, not only under IDEA, not only under the Rehabilitation Act, but just in general. You should know what your counties are saying that you can access, what their policies are. Your parents aren't the only ones that should know this. I mean, they are probably the ones that should do the bulk of the research, because I can't imagine a middle school child will be able to do this. But I think the onus is on the parents to do the research and share it with their children, especially because, children are young. They may not have the resources to do this. But I think definitely a lot of these tips really reflect what students should know to be better advocates. Even tip number 10, recognize the challenges and celebrate successes. Every child, whether you have a disability or not, should learn to, when you have a challenge, when you can't do something, don't focus so much on what you can't do. Just recognize maybe you can't do this, but celebrate what you can. And that's a tip for any student, any child. And I think a lot of these, while it's geared at parents, a lot of them reflect what children need as well.
And as a follow-up question, is there any educational resources or ways to obtain educational resources for those children when looking at perhaps, for example, college maybe? Okay, so the question is, are there any resources to obtain that information once you start going into college and once you start looking at that if you're a student with a disability? Did I get that right? Yes.
Okay. Yes, there are. So what a lot of people do now, speaking from someone who has just graduated undergrad and is currently in graduate school and has had to navigate this, what a lot of me and other little people have done is we've created Facebook groups and advocacy groups on not just Facebook but on other social media where we're just like posting in links so everyone has these resources. And I know it's the same for a lot of other young people with disabilities where we've like flocked online to provide these resources, but there are organizations. Right here you can see a lot more resources and things like that. Understood.org is a great resource. All their information is in English and in Spanish. It's very technical, legal information that you should know when navigating schools, and I think a lot of it can be applied to university as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I've got a question for kind of both Paula and Stephanie. For Paula, I'm curious, what advice would you have for a young parent who is just, really beginning that journey of understanding what their child's disability is? What advice would you have for them? And Stephanie, what advice would you have for young people who are looking to become the best self-advocates that they can be? So, question for the both of you.
Okay. So the question is, what advice would you have for young parents who are beginning their journey in raising a child with a disability? And then as a follow-up question, what advice would you have for young advocates who are trying to become better at advocacy, which is always a really tough journey? So I'm going to let Paola take it first.
Well, thank you for your question. I'm going to, say, some things that I would love in the past that somebody has told me before.
Mm-hmm.
And when I had my child diagnosed. And one of the things is try to research, to investigate, to understand what's the diagnosis or what do you think do you need to understand about the condition your child has. That's one of the things. Try to understand, but don't be overwhelmed because you can find everything on the internet. So you have to be very cautious. You have to filter the information you find out. This is one of the things. And the other one is try to look for people who have been before in this process. Try to ask them questions. Try to have a networking with them, and to feel like support and to feel that you are not alone. That's very important. For me, it was very important. That okay, this is something that somebody has been through before, so I'm not the only one. For me, it was very important to know that this is not so, maybe not so, I'm not the only one in the world, because a lot of people is going through this process.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. As for becoming a better self-advocate, I would say that's a process. You're never going to become the best self-advocate you can be. You're never going to do that because it's always a journey. You're always learning new things to better yourself and to fight for your rights. And I think it's important to note that activism and advocacy are very intertwined. If someone is a disability self-advocate, they're in effect a disability activist as well, because every small gain you make is a gain for the disability community and as a whole, and for other disability activists. And that starts with first accepting your disability identity. Recognize that you have a disability, accept it, and learn to love it, which is something even the best advocates don't always get to do. I mean, it's always a process. You never get to that point where you're completely okay with yourself as someone with a disability. I know I've gone through that. I know other people with disabilities who have also gone through that, but I think not only is a step to learning to advocate for yourself, an external learning to argue with people and say this is what I deserve, but it's also learning and accepting that you do deserve it.
So can I just expand that to Victor so that he can answer that also? But let me also just expand and say that this guide was funded thanks to Coca-Cola and the New York Women's Group in terms of for women and for girls. But women take the vast majority of the caretaking in families and for people with disabilities. So what can women do to get men to be more fully present in the process of advocating for children with disabilities, and what is it about being a man with a disability that might be a different perspective?
Well, let me start off, Jennifer, with a very important insight, which is that I was raised by my abuela, which is my grandmother, because my mother, when we came to this country, had to work. So my mother had the role of the father, and my grandmother had the role of the mother. In some ways, this is quite often the case with immigrant families, and I think there isn't enough support for fathers to really give them the tools to also understand how they can be great partners. I think this toolkit, though, is really at the core focused on the ones that make the biggest change in any society, and that's women. And I think if we can empower women to have these resources and these tools, and girls, specifically young girls with disabilities, will see that every major social movement and every major social transformation really had a very strong leadership in the disability movement by women, and in the Chicano Latino movement by women, in the disability movement, Judith Human and others, and Kitty Cone, and the Chicano Latino movement, Dolores Huerta. But really, ultimately, it's a partnership. My father was not very present in my life, but he did care. He just did not know how to be as effective in the day-to-day work. So I think that this toolkit, although it focuses on empowering women and sending the message of the farm workers movement, which is Si Se Puede, yes, we can, right? We can raise a child with a disability to be independent, to be able to form part of society. We have to remember that each of these communities experiences their own social constructs which are engendered, which are also in educational level, socioeconomic level, as well as very diverse. I mean, there are over 23 countries with their own diverse histories in Latin America, and immigrants that come to this country with a whole different social construct of their identity, national identity, gendered identity, and their disability identity. So a lot of these things have to be negotiated, and I think ultimately the mother and the grandmother become a really core conduit for helping to shape that identity. So as a man, I become an ally to the powerful women that are leading the charge, and I'm just very grateful that there was some strong partnership that we had with the other co-authors to really create a beautiful resource and guide. And we're really excited to share the same content in Spanish in the near future. So we'll be launching this same webinar in Spanish, and we want you all to connect with us so that we can draw a large and diverse gathering online to disseminate this content and continue to share it within the various communities. Ultimately, this identity is cross-cutting. So any group, whether it's the Hispanic American Chamber of Commerce, or whether it's network of Latino lawyers, or whether it's a network of doctors and other professional groups, they all have populations of persons with disabilities, and we have an opportunity to really touch these communities across these different groups. So this is not a small and isolated group of people. This is a community that touches all other communities as well. Any other questions from our participants or from our speakers?
Yes, Eleanor.
What kind of research went into compiling these tools, or is it principally based on the personal experiences of the three of you? And if so, how did you all come together?
So, do you mind if I answer that question?
Sure.
Okay. So actually, we worked with Fiesta Educativas Iris Espiritu. She is the parent outreach coordinator. So she has a lot of experience getting parents of children with disabilities information and resources, and so she provided insight into what would have been helpful, and because she is the mother of a child with a disability as well, what would have been helpful, as well as Paola gave us that insight as well. And I also worked, when I was volunteering with Little People of America, I primarily did parent outreach for Latino parents of children who just had children with dwarfism. So basically, at least what I did is I reached out to my network of parents, I spoke to my own mother, and I got a sense of what they would have wanted when they were just starting out their journey. And so it was very much qualitative research, interviewing and asking what would have been helpful.
That was for the tips, right?
Yes.
But tell us about the research that went into the statistics and some of the other harder research that we did in the toolkit.
Okay. So that was actually the fellows who are not here. I was not there. I was not working as part of Respectability, so I can't speak to that. I think Philip can speak to that because he was the one controlling all the research. It was not me, so I don't know.
Hello, webinar audience. Just to interject, this is Philip Conpoli, the Policy and Practices Director. So in terms of the statistics we pulled together, there's two primary sources for what we did. One is the American Community Survey. It's an annual survey done by the U.S. Census Bureau that really provides a good sense of the percentage of people with disabilities across every racial demographic group. The website that Census Bureau runs is not that user-friendly, and it's very hard to port through all those statistics. So we pulled the most important information that people need to know. And people need to know it because they need to have a sense that they are not alone. They need to know that there are millions of people just like themselves. In terms of the education statistics, we pulled that information from the U.S. Department of Education. Every year they track students being served under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and we pulled those statistics together to look at things based on Latinx identity.
It's quite a remarkable tool. Jennifer, can you tell us why you think these kind of a tool, like what is the ultimate goal? How does this tool live on beyond today's launch?
So there's a lot of really important pieces of information here. When you look at the data, what are some of the key points? So number one is that the majority of students in American public schools today are children of color. The majority of students in America's public schools are children of color, and that a huge number of them are growing up in homes that speak Spanish the whole time they're in the household, and that when the children go to the school, frequently they are not getting the diagnosis and they are not getting the accommodations and the supports that they need to succeed. And the numbers that are involved, the sheer large numbers of children that are essentially being cast aside by our society is a massive disgrace for our country, and it is going to harm us significantly economically in the future because these are talented children. I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make is to think that children with disabilities are incapable when they all have some capabilities. So number one, it's this large number of children who have capabilities, whose capabilities are essentially being sidelined from the benefits of society. And this has multiple people who are harmed. First, the individual with a disability who is significantly harmed because their life is essentially thrown away. But secondly, the society, which is denied the benefit of the talents that they can bring to the world. So this is very significant, and particularly one of the things that's most interesting in the data is that we see this underrepresentation of people with disabilities in the public school. In other words, there's so many kids who are in a school, and what happens is that that English is not their first language, and so if they're not thriving in the classroom, sometimes people say they're lazy or they have a bad attitude, as opposed to the fact that this is a smart kid who's trying hard, who really needs some support so that they can succeed. So what happens is all too often they get frustrated in the classroom and then they act out. And then when they act out, they get suspended. And when they get suspended, they lose so much content in the school that they get so far behind that they wind up dropping out. So one of the key pieces of the data is the large number of Latino students, Latinx students, who are dropping out or being expelled from school. Where are they going? Those people are going into the school-to-prison pipeline. So if you look at who's incarcerated in America, let's look at women who are incarcerated. Women who are incarcerated, both like men, tend to be people of color. Which people of color? People of color with disabilities whose disabilities were not addressed when they were children. And there are a lot of people who want to address the criminal justice problem by saying we need to have different laws about sentencing, and a lot of those laws are really important. But the fact is that even when they're released, if they're released but they don't have the literacy, or they don't have the executive function skills, or they don't have the mental health services, they're not going to be able to thrive in society. So that is what we see, is that we want to go to the root. When we think about making America a better country, we need to think about the talents of every individual, and that starts with the child. I have, as a parent, a tremendous amount of experience, just like Paula, on what it's like to raise a child with a disability. I know this as a parent, that people, they dismiss your child's abilities and they kind of rate your child off sometimes and they move on to other children. But the fact is these kids are exactly as you put in the toolkit. They have unlimited capacity for good. And so what we want to do is spark really a revolution that the parents should be demanding the right services and should be engaged with their teachers and with their students and with their children so that they can have the kind of success that you have as a PhD with a disability, and that Stephanie has who's also doing her graduate studies right now as a person with a disability. I will point out also that only 7% of children with disabilities achieve even a college diploma. Only 7% achieve a college diploma, and almost all of them are white children who are born in America and who are from a two-parent family. And that has got to change, because America needs to be a place of opportunity for everyone, including people from Spanish-speaking families.
Thank you, Jennifer. So I think what we can do is we can basically see that there is a fundamental imperative. There's a sense of urgency in mobilizing attention and resources and really taking action. And one way to take action is, one way do you think that we can take action, Stephanie?
Take action,
To address either the
to address.
broader policy issues that Jennifer talked about, or some of the work directly in the home with the family, the siblings, or the community. What action do you recommend? And a different sort of target community needs to take. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry.
We online?
Generate technical issues.
What time is it?
1:15.
So what I was saying before, we really want this to be an action-oriented toolkit. So Jennifer just summarized the broader policy implications of not having adequate interventions or adequate supports, and what the costs are of excluding young kids with disabilities or not supporting parents sufficiently. So the action that Jennifer basically called upon is to really understand that this is a major policy issue, major issue in our country that needs to be tackled. What kind of action do you think that young people and self-advocates need to do, perhaps to help parents or their own schools, or help their community really thrive in its culture of inclusion within the Latinx community?
So for young people who are self-advocates, as I said before, I feel like self-advocacy is intrinsically tied to activism. So I think leaning more into that advocacy, activism sort of line, and just not necessarily towing that, but like understanding and accepting that, and just being louder, being as loud as you can, to argue.
Why is being loud important within the Latinx community?
Being loud is important because a lot of the time, speaking as Latina and speaking as someone who is always encouraged to be the loudest voice in any room, regardless if I was speaking it, regardless if I was typing it, regardless if I was sending an email, always be that metaphorical loudest voice in any room. I think it's important because many times in our culture, in our community, certain voices are silenced or not as important. There's a saying in our community that is, children are pretty, eres más bonita con la boca cerrada, which is you're prettier with your mouth closed.
But we also have a kid, llora no mama.
Exactly.
Which means he who does not speak out does not get,
Yeah.
the benefits.
So it's very much a culture of children should be quiet, should be in a different room, let the adults do everything, and that isn't even just for people with disabilities, for children with disabilities. It's for everyone. We all know the stereotype of the Latina mother babying her young son, whether or not, or even having the 40-year-old son who still lives at home and doesn't want to work and isn't married yet, because you move away when you're married, not necessarily when you are capable of living on your own. And that's true for having a disability. And it's even more true There's that belief that when you have a disability, no matter what kind of disability you have, you will live at home until you're old and until.
Well, let's just quickly get some feedback from Paula.
Yes.
Paula, your son has significant developmental disabilities, and there's such a broad range of experiences for parents, right? My parents knew that I could develop my capacity, but I would have very, very little physical capacity to exercise my own will. But what about in those scenarios where the child maybe can't communicate or isn't able to form their own decisions? How do you think this toolkit, or how do you think this perspective also needs to be strengthened and reimagine? You and I talked about the definition of success.
Yeah.
And how problematic the word success can be, right?
Yes, exactly. What I think that we as parents have to work with our children that maybe are not, it's not easy for them to be advocates for themselves, and maybe they cannot communicate as easy. I think we should, as parents, try to help them to raise or to potentialize their skills and their abilities. For example, in my case, my son is very good with music and dancing. He's not very good with talking and, writing or maybe reading, but he's very good at dancing and expressing himself that way with images and this kind of thing. So we have to, to take the most of these kind of abilities, because believe me, everyone has their abilities, his abilities. Sorry, my English is not so good sometimes, my grammar. So I think we have to, to try to train those abilities they have, those skills. That's one of the, things. Don't focus in the things they can do, or maybe they are not so good at, and focus in the things they can and they are better at doing. And also, for us, success, or for me, it means different kinds of things. What is success really? What for one person maybe to have a wonderful job, or to have to have a lot of money, or to have a big house. Of course, we can respect that. But I think we have to be, for me, in my case, my personal experience, success is to be a good human being, living within a community, and being, what do I want for my kids to be, independent enough to, in the day that I'm not going to be there, so he can be, living within the community itself, so himself. So for me, that's, success. And try to, for me, it's a plus to have him, because I can understand that the world is not only one way. The world is so different. So the views that we can have. For me, it's step one, another key.
Thank you. Well, we've heard a lot of different perspectives. That is a testament to how rich and diverse our communities are and our experiences are. But there is now this tool to bring us together. And I want to encourage everybody to continue to follow Respectability on Twitter and on Facebook. I want to encourage you to look up and download and share this toolkit. Think about your communities and the ways that you engage, and help really elevate this higher set of expectations and a higher sense of possibilities. Thank you, Jennifer, for convening this gathering and inviting us to be together. Would you like to say a few closing words?
I would. I want to thank Victor Pineda. I want to thank Paula. I want to thank Stephanie. I want to thank our partners at Fiesta Educativa. I want to thank our funders, New York Women's and Coca-Cola's, for making this possible. And I also want to say that we're really beginning this journey, and that we do believe in nothing about us without us. We are looking for more people from the Latinx community who will join us in this work, and as many allies as we can have. Respectability is currently looking to hire people from the Latinx community in New York and in the greater Los Angeles area. We also have a national fellowship program that is in the Washington, D.C. area. We encourage people from the Latinx community who are bilingual to apply, particularly those with deep lived disability experience. what we see is that this is not going to be a sprint. This is going to be really a marathon. But we have 3 champions with us here today who brought this toolkit forward, and our partners in California. I could not be more grateful to each of you for the extraordinary work. Everybody can find these resources on our website at respectability.org. There is a whole section in Espanol, so please look for the Espanol resources on our website, and do follow us in social media. We are looking for volunteers, and we are so delighted to have these 3 heroes with us today. Thank you all who are here in person, and thanks to those who are online or on the phone. We wish you all much success. Thank you very much.
Thanks.